we're going to talk about conditional probability and two-way tables. So you'll notice at the top we have what we call a two-way table. So it tells us whether we have a man or woman and whether they live in Davidson County or do not live in Davidson County. So we want to compute several different probabilities. So our first probability here is if we select one student randomly, what's the probability that we have a woman? So we're going to have the probability of woman equals, and I can go here and click Insert Equation, and then I can type in a fraction. So the number of women that we have over the total number of people that we have. So we get 13 out of 17 here. So now we want to calculate the probability that we select one student randomly. If we select one student randomly, what is the probability that the student is from Davidson? So I have the probability of Davidson. So this is going to be, so we live in Davidson County, we have that 10 here out of our total. Again, our total here is 17. So that's our probability. So now we want to look at conditional probability. So conditional probability is what is the probability that we have something given that something else is true. So here we want to know what's the probability that we get a woman if we're selecting one student randomly, given that that student lives in Davidson. So we can first use conditional probability. So in this case, we can denote this is the probability that they're a woman given, so to use that given notation, it is just above the enter key on the keyboard, and to activate it, I'm pressing Shift and hitting that button. So it's just a vertical bar there. So woman given, right, that they live in Davidson County. So this is going to be equal to the probability that they are and from Davidson over what we're given. So here we're given that they live in Davidson County. Right? So the way I like to think about conditional probability is both conditions over the given condition. So both over given. So this is equal to, right? So what's the probability that they're a woman and they live in Davidson County? So that is going to be, so probability here, we have 7, oops, a fraction there, 7 out of 17. Let's make this a little bit larger here. And the probability that they live in Davidson County, so that is going to be our 10 out of 17. So when we divide fractions, we're going to take our first fraction. So if I can grab that here. Nope. So we're going to take our first fraction, and we are going to multiply it by the reciprocal of the second fraction. So we're going to flip that second fraction. So then here our 17s are going to cancel out, leaving us with 7 out of 10. So now we can also compute the same probability using the two-way table. So the probability that they're a woman given that the student lives in Davidson County. So what we know is that the student lives in Davidson County. So all we're really focused on here is that they live in Davidson County. I'm just going to highlight that column there. That is the important information. So that is all that we are paying attention to. So I know that we're going to have a fraction here. So the women that live in Davidson County, there are how many women that live in Davidson County? Right? We have 7 women that live in Davidson County. And of how many people that live in Davidson County? 10. So we can see here using that two-way table is going to allow us to find the probability a lot quicker. Right? So I'm going to unhighlight this here. Right, so let's do the same thing with 2 more probabilities. So if we select one student randomly, what is the probability that they live in Davidson County given that they're women? So notice this is not the same probability that we just calculated before. I'm going to highlight this. Right, so here we have that they live in Davidson given that they're a woman. So again, this is going to be have our both here, so Davidson and woman over what we're given. So we're given this time that they're a woman, right? So Davidson and woman, we calculated that in the previous problem. And then what's our probability here that they're a woman? Well, we have 13, right, out of 17. So we calculated that in that very first problem. So this is going to be 13 out of 17. And so again, we're going to take the numerator of that big complex fraction there and leave it the way it is, and then we're going to multiply it by the reciprocal of the second fraction. So this is going to be 17 over 13, giving us 7 over 13. So now if we use the two-way table to come up with our probability, right, we're looking at Davidson given woman. So all we're focused on here is to start out with women. That's the category that we're selecting from. So how many of those women live in Davidson County? We've got a total of 7 women who live in Davidson County out of a total of how many people that live in Davidson County? 13. So that's going to be our probability there. So one more. We want to find the probability that they're a woman and live in Davidson County if we're selecting one student randomly. So our probability here of woman and Davidson is going to be equal to the probability that they're a woman times the probability that they live in Davidson County given that they're a woman, right? So we obtain that formula from our conditional probability and we're just multiplying, right, both sides there. Right. So the probability that they're a woman, we did that earlier. So that was 13 out of 17. Let's make this a little larger. And then times, right, our conditional probability of Davidson given woman, we just calculated that to be 7 out of 13. So when we multiply those together, we get 7 out of 17. So looking at our two-way table, a woman and Davidson. So we look for woman and Davidson. Well, that's going to be our woman and Davidson is going to be our 7. And then we're referencing the whole entire there, so that's out of 17. So if we look and compare these 3 problems, what's the key difference in calculating their probabilities, right? So our key difference here was those denominators, right? So the so this stands out. So the denominator is the key difference in calculating these probabilities. So that's the key here. So that sums up probability or conditional probability.